Good evening and welcome to you, both you prospective students, but also family and guests who are here to kind of check things out. We're happy to have you as admitted students and guests joining us this evening. And we're in the meeting module of Zoom, and the session is being recorded. So if you don't want to be seen or heard, please turn off your video or keep it off. And mute your microphone. There's a place to enter questions in the chat box if you have if you have questions. A few of you have already used the chat, and we'll also be leaving time at the end of this meeting to answer any questions you have. So. Um, there we go. My name is Joe Romero, and I am a professor of classics at Mary Washington, but I'm also at this time honored to be serving as the chair of the department, which includes three distinct disciplines: classics, philosophy, and religious studies. And what I'm going to do with a little PowerPoint presentation in the next several minutes is just walk you through the kinds of degrees that we are responsible for preparing students to earn at the University of Mary Washington, and tell you a little bit about something else about us as a department. And then if there are any questions, I hope that you will feel confident enough to present them to me, and I'll do my very best. And if I can't find an answer, I will take your email and I will provide you an answer. Everything good? I hope so. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, so what you have is in me is a representative of a department, which is correctly listed here at the very top of this slide, the Department of Classics, Philosophy, and Religion. The phrase religious studies actually refers to the program and not the department. It's a long enough story that it's not worth troubling you over, but I'll be correcting my header soon enough to make it reflect the truth. And what you see on this first slide is a a representation of the degrees that so we're a public institution, and the State Council of Higher Education for Virginians has um, authorized its public institutions to award specific degrees. In the case of the University of Mary Washington, there are two degrees. One is classics. The other is philosophy and religious studies. It's a separate degree that actually accounts for both major concentrations. Um, uh, in practice, um, uh, so if you were to come to Mary Washington, you would find yourself trying to earn one of a degree in one of those two degrees in three areas: in classics, philosophy, and religious studies. So if you go to college, you declare a major. And in this case, classics at the beginning of next academic year will be able to award four separate major concentrations. And they are two that are very skills based: classics archaeology and classics Latin, as well as two that are culturally based: classics ancient Mediterranean studies and classics classical civilization. Now, I'll get a little bit more deeply into what those varieties mean, but basically it's a large discipline and there are various ways of doing the work of it, and so that's why they're split up that way. Philosophy, so the degree would be philosophy, religious studies, but your major would be philosophy. And philosophy splits into two halves. One is philosophy is straightforward. This is the tradition of philosophy. I'll talk a bit more about the way it's organized later on. But philosophy with a pre-law concentration is another way that people who are interested in law school are able to complete a degree that will be, we believe, will be particularly helpful to them as they do the work of being a philosopher, of being a lawyer. And so that's different. And I'll come back to this in just a bit. And then finally, there is a absolutely just one and only one form of the religious studies part of the philosophy religious studies degree called religious studies. And I'll return to that in just a second. Now, even though we're three programs, we really are one department. If you were interested when you go to college in the notion of asking big questions about, what are people, and how do we organize ourselves, and how do we make decisions with real consequences about, how to be in this world, that general area, that whole set of concerns, that's the province of the humanities. And classics, philosophy, and religious studies is an assembly of three signature humanities programs. Humanities is sometimes not given a lot of respect as an avenue of study, because people tend to think, well, if the line isn't really super direct between your area of study and the way that you'll end up earning your living, then what value could it have? But our contention is that we really are an outstanding method of preparation that is historically valued as a mode of preparing one for meaningful work. And the reason you can do that is that you can think through really hard, important questions, and not just on a balance sheet, based on what will be good for the greatest number of people, given certain conditions. So we train people how to think. And whether we do that through looking at logic, an ideal organization of the mind, that is philosophy, or whether it comes through the way people make sense of the world through their faith traditions, whether that's religious studies, or whether that happens to be um, a, a representative um, aggregate um, of studies that stands for the Western tradition, as is classics. Um, we're all trying to deal with big questions, really big questions. And we think that the students that graduate from our major programs are ideally situated for advancing, whether if they want to go, to graduate school, or if you want to go to a professional school, or if you want to enter into the workforce and find work that is meaningful to you. We think we do that better than anyone. So, um, uh, so let me just give you a little taste of our three areas, and then some of the things we do as a department. There's a lot more than what I can say to you in the little time that we've got together. But there's but I'll give you just enough so that you feel dangerous, and just enough so that you feel like I hope that you can make a decision. So classics, beginning with next year, will have 4 different major concentrations. That is 4 different ways that you can earn a degree in classics from the state of Virginia, from the University of Mary Washington. 2 of them are very skills-based. Our discipline is organized very largely by the study of ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and really the ancient Mediterranean broadly, through the 2 principal cultures that classics has organized itself around, ancient Greece, ancient Rome. So archaeology studies the material culture. So one of our 3 faculty, Professor O'Talon, is a certified archaeologist, specifies in numismatics, the study of coins, but she's a dirt archaeologist. She knows how to do it. She's dug in Italy and in Carthage, and she's really quite expert in the material culture, the stuff you dig out of the dirt, and interpreting it to build a picture of the tradition, specifically of the Greco-Roman tradition, as a point of origin for the way we put together cities, the way we put together homes, the way we put up public buildings, the way we, and that's not very far from the way we put up governments, and we put up literature, and we put up lots of things that are really, essential to our own definition of what's normal. Well, what's normal 70, 80% of the time is something that the Greeks and Romans did. Latin is another avenue to our study of the classical antiquity, and in a better world, we would also say Greek, major in Greek, but these are the two primary languages of ancient Greece, ancient Rome, are Greek and Latin. We have enough interest from students to be able to supply a Latin major program for people who want to go on to teach Latin at the high school level, for people who want to pursue graduate study of above and beyond, but really because the authors who wrote in Latin informed the way we create, the way we built a concept of literature, and because it gives us access to the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans. And so classical archaeology and Latin, two of the pathways that you can earn a major in classics. A new major concentration is ancient Mediterranean studies, and classical civilization has been here for as many years as I've been a faculty member here. Now, ancient Mediterranean studies focuses not just on the Greeks and the Romans, but everybody living in the ancient Mediterranean. Whether they were the Celts living in what we would call Spain and France, or whether it was the various populations of Africa who were known to the Greeks and Romans in Northern Africa, or the Semitic and Asiatic peoples that they met in Asia Minor, that is Turkey and the Levantine coast. There were a lot more people than just Greeks and Romans. And ancient Mediterranean studies is a major concentration that gives you access to the full, diverse complexity of classical antiquity. And we think, therefore, it gives a fuller picture. This is a brand new major concentration approved just this last academic year and will be implemented in fall of 2021. Interestingly, when we're talking about major requirements, this one will be distinctive in that whereas Greek classical archaeology, Latin, and classical civilization, all of them require you to take either Greek or Latin. But the ancient Mediterranean studies track permits you to major in or to do your language requirement in any language. So you could take Japanese or French or Italian. That's your choice. Those languages, either in antiquity or in present, very often have a relationship to that world, and so with somebody studying French, for example, you might be interested in ancient Gaul, and so that draws that connection in there. But the real purposes of this new track is twofold. One is to provide another point of access for people interested in classics to come to it without taking Greek and Latin necessarily, because it's important, but it's not absolutely necessary for doing serious work as an undergraduate in the study of this culture, these cultures. Classical civilization, on the other hand, is not just the ancient world in either its Greek and Roman form or in its complexity as all the cultures making up the ancient world, but it also is trying to follow the reception of that world from classical antiquity through the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, to the Romantic period and modernity. So it's looking also at the reception of Greece and Rome throughout world history. So this is the classics major. And again, we represent to a degree the tradition of what it is to be human in the West. And you could tell that I just had time to update this. So sorry, I'm going to write 4 because that'll drive me crazy. But it will be include that 4th concentration starting in the fall of 2021. Now, our second distinct program in the department is philosophy. And for us, it represents another way that you can evaluate the big questions about what it is to be human, what is justice, what is it to be a gendered thing, male or female, or neither, or both. We ask the big questions. Philosophy does it from the perspective of what does reason say? Now, our department consists of 3 faculty, David Ambule, Jason Hebmatsky, and Mike Reno. And you will notice in the philosophy curriculum that there's an emphasis on having an East-West competency. And by, so it's both Western in the sense of both the Anglo-American, so England and the United States, as well as the continental tradition, that is France and Germany and others, Italian and others. But it's also Eastern in the sense that there are courses taught in Hinduism and Buddhism and in other Eastern traditions that also factor into an appreciation of logical, analytical thinking as it crosses world cultures. It also is historical. So there are courses that are offered in ancient, medieval, as well as modern philosophy. And I've already mentioned the distinction between continental and analytic. Now, philosophy is a general theme, and I'm not going to go deep into this because I'm not a philosopher. But broadly speaking, philosophy breaks down into 3 areas. One is what's real, what's true, and that's ontology. How do we know it? And are there good processes for making true conclusions as opposed to vulnerable or false conclusions? And that would be both epistemology and logic. And then finally, there's, well, if we know what's real and we know that we know it reasonably well, how should we behave? Ethics is the 3rd branch. And we have a minor in practical ethics, and ethics is a strength that we have in our philosophy curriculum. David Ambule and Michael Reno are both, Jason Hebmatsky and Michael Reno are both trained ethicists. David Ambule teaches ancient, which is mostly Greek philosophy, as well as Eastern philosophy. So he has taught Buddhism and Hinduism. So that's the philosophy degree. Now, I noticed on the interest sheet that one of you put down philosophy pre-law in there. So I'm seeing a question here that I'm going to go ahead and address now, Chloe Jones. Would you say it's necessary to major in philosophy when going into the neuroscience field? I'd say probably not. I would say probably you want to major in biology. But we do teach courses both in religious studies and in philosophy that I think you would really be interested in and that would support the work that you're trying to do as a neuroscientist. Mehdi Amonrazavi, whom I'll address in just a few seconds, teaches a course on neurotheology, which is effectively an argument that our not only capacity, but our predilection for believing in God or gods is in fact genetically predisposed. So he gets into the science of religion, basically religious belief. And in philosophy, we teach philosophy of mind. And that certainly our philosophers are all of them very much attached to the idea that science is real and true and absolutely necessary for understanding, for philosophy to be based upon. So yes, you would find courses that would support you, but no, I think it wouldn't be the major, but I think it would be a complement. It'd be an excellent complement, either to take individual courses or even better to major as in philosophy as well. Now, to the topic of, you're very welcome, and to the topic of philosophy pre-law. We have a pre-law concentration, and I welcome you to go to the website and look at the curriculum for the pre-law. But it's a series of courses. The premise of having a pre-law major in philosophy as opposed to somewhere else, right? It could be anywhere, but it's here at Mary Washington, is that you'll be a better lawyer if you can think clearly. If you can distinguish arguments and make arguments, that'll make you a better lawyer. And for what it's worth, we also have a very outstanding ethics program, and you might better be able to discern what is ethical and what not if you understood how to analyze those arguments. So we have a pre-law, so you can go to law school without majoring in philosophy pre-law. Absolutely, you can major in anything. We think that there is distinct advantages, and we do have a track record of helping students get into very good law schools. And they'll do it in a different way if you take pre-law as your major rather than if you took math or if you took English. It'll be a different way of preparing. So I'd say it's ultimately about you choosing what's right for you to be the kind of person you want to be. And we think that the people who choose this route are very satisfied that they know how to distinguish right and wrong, and they know quickly how to analyze an argument, and that's helpful to them as they pursue this professional pathway. Now, Mary Washington has an agreement in place, by the way, with George Mason University School of Law. And there's a 3-in-3 program. It's basically you do 3 years at Mary Washington, and you don't have to be a pre-law major. Just anybody could do this, but you do 3 years at Mary Washington where you take all your JNETs, all your major requirements in 3 years. So you have to be really careful, really well planned. And in your junior year, on January 1st, you submit your application. You take the LSATs, you submit your application to George Mason Law. Then those 30 credits that would have been elective credits to graduate from Mary Washington, you're actually earning while now a fully enrolled student at George Mason School of Law. And so your first year of law school is your senior year of college. And then you come back and you walk with your peers at commencement, and then you've got 2 more years of law school left after that. And that assumes that you did well in the LSATs, that they admitted you, that you have a good GPA, that you've made it through that process. But if successful, then yeah, your senior year here is your first year of law school there, and you're never on campus at all at Mary Washington. And then you do 2 more years at the law school, and you're a lawyer at 24 or 25. So there you go. So that's the program in philosophy. And then finally, we have a department that includes religious studies. So here's where we're asking the big questions about what it is to be human, about what is just, what it is to be human, about how we make decisions, about race and gender and sexuality. We ask those big questions. And here we integrate or lean towards the way those questions are managed according to various faith traditions. Now, we are not a ministerial preparatory, body at all. That's not what we do. Higher education studies religion very much from a sociological and historical modality. So it's a very scientific way of looking at movements, faith movements. And the curriculum is organized by looking very much at the whole world's religions. So US religion, but non-US religion, Western religion and Eastern religion, ancient, medieval, and modern religion. So you're seeing, certain kinds of trends. The phrase that they use in terms of the distribution requirement is Abrahamic and non-Abrahamic. The Abrahamic religions are Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, so the big three. And so what you have to develop a strength there, but also in non-Abrahamic religions. You have to take coursework in Buddhism and Native American religions and other faith traditions. So that is religious studies, and we've got 3 faculty there, Mediam and Razavi, who is also a director of one of our centers that are housed within the department. He teaches non-Western religions. He also teaches ancient medieval religions. An associated faculty member from philosophy, David Ambuel, will teach ancient periodically, but primarily that's handled through other faculty. Mary Beth Matthews is an expert in American religions, particularly African American religions. She's the new director of the African American Studies minor. And Jennifer Barry is is an expert in ancient Christianity and late antique Christianity. So she often will teach the ancient material as well. And so, just to briefly review, 1 department, but 3 very distinct programs and faculty within it. And what unites us is that we're all in the humanities. We believe powerfully that these are an excellent education, period, and also excellent training for meaningful work after Mary Washington. We take that responsibility. I take that responsibility very seriously, and we mentor our students to pursue the education that they need to develop powerful minds that are capable of making really good decisions and doing the work that they need to do to contribute the way they want to contribute to a world that needs it. So we take that very seriously. But it'll be a very a personal decision about what you come to college for and how you develop and which one of the majors at Mary Washington and the faculty, really that's the most important thing, and the faculty who are going to help contribute to your development. Now, I just throw it out here that there are a number of other concerns within the department. We've got 4 minor programs, not including African American Studies, which is not our department's possession, but our faculty member, Mary Beth Matthews, is leading it. There are minors in Asian Studies, Middle Eastern Studies, Contemplative, and Museum Studies. Happens to be hosted in our department right now. We have affiliations strong and principled with the James Farmer Center. James Farmer is a very famous faculty member who achieved his fame, though, as a civil rights leader. And there's a center in his name, which of course helps to promote social justice in the area of civil rights and for African Americans in particular. And then with women, gender, and sexuality studies, which is a major program at Mary Washington devoted to the sorts of issues that the title implies. So we associate energetically with both of those programs, if that helps you understand something of our character. And then there are two centers that are housed within the department, the Lydecker Center for Asian Studies. And because we believe that a more peaceful world results from having critical conversations with people of differing points of view, the CATI program was established last year in religion and dialogue to promote knowledge between different faith traditions. And then finally, we are home to a Zen garden. You see a tiny little picture in the upper right of the Zen garden, which is right behind our academic building, the James Farmer Hall. So these are different things that kind of inform our vibe as a department. So I think that most of this, I feel like I have addressed in a very broad way. I don't want to repeat myself too many times, and I do want to leave time for questions. So here I am. I'm all yours. If you would like, you're welcome to turn on your camera and show me your face. But if you prefer not to be recorded, then I understand, leave it off. But you could certainly unmute yourself and ask your question, or you can write it into the chat space. Excellent. Hey, Flynn, very nice to meet you. So I'm going to put my email in there as well, by the way. This is my email address. And, so I'm still going to wait because some people may not have thought of their question. So I'm here. But if a question were not forthcoming on the tip of your tongue, I hope that you will, you'll write to me. And if I don't know the answer again, I will connect you with the person who does. So Chloe, your question about subject matter look like in these courses? You'll have to tell me which course. So essays, yeah, so that's a pedagogical choice. Is there a specific class, like Greek class, or so if you took a language with me, if I were teaching you Greek or Latin, philosophy, okay. Let's say you took a course, so I'd say that in college in general, that's going to be a function of the professor. The professor is going to decide what kinds of assessment, that's a key word there, what kinds of assessment will be the most useful for their making sure you're making progress. Some people give multiple choice exams. Not many. It's not a great idea in most of the humanities, but there are aspects of the humanities where you might do a multiple choice test. When that's useful when there's like facts or like logic problems. But yeah, essays, yeah, exams, yeah. So those modes of assessment are, they will vary widely between different faculty. I think most of us believe in writing, so you'll leave Mary Washington as a good writer because it's expected. A good writer, a good speaker, because there's a speaking intensive, and a lot of stuff. It's part of our general education program. So at a seminar level, oh yeah, you'd be mostly doing writing. Like your grades might entirely be a function of essays and papers rather than exams or, that are either essay exams or multiple choice or short answer or, and fill-ins or things like that. So a seminar in really any of these things, classics, philosophy, and religious studies, it'll be a smaller group. It might be 15 people at maximum. And what you would probably do is, I think it's fair to say that once you reach the seminar stage, the fourth year of college, you could take seminars earlier. You're looking at primary evidence almost exclusively. So if that's in Hegel, Marx, and Nietzsche, you're going to be reading lots of Hegel, Marx, and Nietzsche, and not people writing about Hegel, Marx, and Nietzsche. I mean Hegel, Marx, and Nietzsche. And if you take a seminar with me in Virgil, we're going to read a lot of Virgil. So what very often what we're trying to do in seminars is get you to a point where you can read primary or original resources and start to draw your own conclusions. Because the purpose of education is really to liberate you from your professors. You know? And the purpose is really, I want you to know enough where you don't need me anymore. So, but there's stuff you don't know, so you need us for a while. So we get you up to speed so that by the time you do that seminar, you're asking questions. You're more like a peer than like somebody who needs to be helped, right? Um, so, and essays are a good way to do that because they don't distract from class too much. So you can use that time to talk because that's an important part of your growth. And then the paper is just like a good, like, okay, now I'm checking in on where their brain is. Okay, they're ready to write this kind of paper. They can create an argument. They can support it with evidence from primary sources. They've read enough secondary sources not to show me that they know how to read them, but to where an idea could be helpful to them, they were able to locate it in some secondary sources. And they know how their own argument is distinct from other people's arguments. It's now you're a grown up. You're a grown up thinking. That's what happens by the time you hit the seminar. Um, but I'd say, yeah, at the earlier phases, your first, second, third years, there's shorter papers. There's tests. There's more tests. There's um, more things that are evaluating your ability to take in some information. So when I teach a 100-level class in classics, for example, because I'm a classicist, I'm teaching people facts and also abstract thinking. You shouldn't be able to leave my course in Roman civilization without knowing when Rome was or where the major cities were, or who wrote and when they wrote, and what, like there's some facts that it would be disrespectful to the world if you didn't know those facts. So they're not worth as much as the essays, like the critical thinking. So I weight them less. But I'd be ashamed if you left Latin class without knowing Latin. So there's got to be some, there's got to be some like detaily nuggety type stuff. But I don't think any of us leave here with you at the end of your fourth year as a general rule, thinking that it's facts, 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 facts. It's more about, are you now thinking at a comfortably mature adult, way where now you're ready to go out and do some damage. Like you can think, you can argue, you're ready for graduate school, professional school, you're ready to enter the workforce, you're ready to follow if you must or lead if you can. That's what we want at the end of your cycle. And some people takes a little less time, some take a little more, but we're committed to you as individuals. As a department, we're kind of small, but not the smallest, not the biggest. But we are committed to people. So in our department, so come to Mary Washington, you're going to have a small environment anyway. You're going to have students and you're going to have faculty who really care about your personal development, because that's what you get at a smaller college. I mean, we'll know your names, you'll know our names, and and I just met today with one of my advisees. I've never taught him before in a class before, but I'm meeting with him every month or two. He's a junior, and we're having the conversation about, okay, so you're a triple major in classics and German and music. Okay, that's what you're doing. But what are we doing next? How can we take the things you're good at and that you love and help you figure out the internships that are going to be the right ones, the work experiences in the summer, how can we prepare you so that when you graduate from here, you know that you've got these little pockets filled with opportunities and choices. Um, if you were my kids, I would want you when you graduate to have choices. So we don't want anybody graduating from Mary Washington, period, but certainly not in our department. We don't want anybody to say, oh, well, now I got my degree in philosophy. What do I do now? That's not cool. So we're here to help you really think that through, and we start early, and we help mentor you to good choices. And people go into law school and they work for the government, and some go to medical school because they double majored in science and philosophy. Um, uh, a lot of people go to law school actually from classics, because they think Latin is a good preparation for it. Um, you know, uh, you know, we send people to graduate programs in all of our areas. That happens too. Um, but what matters to us in the end is that you as an individual grow. If we do that right, then we're confident the rest is gonna work out, man. And if we have to wiggle a door open, we will. Wiggle a door open. What major talks on a way with words? Does that fall under philosophy? What I mean is, how our words affect others, or certain words we should use. Okay, so Chloe, so if you mean like rhetoric, by rhetoric I mean how to communicate, then you're looking at an academic discipline called communications. Which we have a new department of starting this very year, this year. So yes, Professor Anand Rao is a person you would look up here, and he teaches communications, and he's very humane, really sweet and wonderful. Love him. But communications would be if you were primarily talking about the way you construct arguments with real careful attention to how they produce persuasion in other people. Now, that could be seen as an unprincipled and unmoored kind of discipline, and we're just going to teach you how to persuade people. But he does it differently. It's much more about bye, Flynn. It's much more about your role as a person, as a citizen, so citizenship. So communications here has I get more of a grounding, more of a depth. Now, I would say that what we do in our disciplines in CPRD are very much the same. That and I could probably say the same about any of the humanities, which is we're again making appeals to tradition, logic, faith traditions. These are very common places to come from when people are arguing. So, for what it's worth, I'm a literary critic. I mean, that's professionally, that's what I do. I study poems and things like that. So I'm very interested in the way people use words to communicate or to persuade other people of things. So when you ask the question, I kind of think yeah, that's what I do for a living. But if you were thinking more about the business of making speeches and using statistical methods to figure out effective, like whether people are persuaded by them or not, communications. That's the place for you. Okay. Any other questions? Great. I really enjoyed your questions, Chloe. Okay, well, I'm going to repeat my email address because that I hope will be helpful. And I hope that you'll feel, confident that you can, ask me a question. I'm going to answer it straightforwardly. If it's us, I'm going to tell you. If it's not us, I'm going to tell you. And what I hope that you'll take away from this is, what we do as an institution. I am myself a graduate of Mary Washington. I graduated in the class of 1993. It was, I got to say, at the time that I made the choice, I probably can't be accused of being a very responsible person for I made a list of schools and I just, that I didn't have it together enough. And so, shame on me. But wow, what a fantastic decision that was. I got very lucky in that I found myself at Mary Washington, completed a degree in classics, Latin in particular. I went on to Duke for grad school, had a fellowship in Europe, and boomeranged back here as faculty. It's been wonderful. And I feel very personally committed to the education of the students who come here. And I think that I'm not alone. There's a lot of us here who we're student centered. That's the kind of institution we are. We're values driven. We believe deeply in ourselves, and we want you to believe in yourself too. So I hope you come to Mary Washington, and but I wish you above all happiness and good luck in making a very hard decision. This one is the one that I made, and I haven't regretted it for a second. So anyhow, thank you. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Oh, hooray, Martina. Take care. Bye-bye.